Welcome back to Fireside Giants. My name is Anthony Rivardo, your host for today, joined alongside Maxx Smith of Fireside Bears here to discuss the Chicago Bears. Where are they? What are they doing? Week 5 of the NFL just concluded. The Chicago Bears sit pretty at 3-2, and as you all know, the New York Giants hold their first-round pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, which is now far more relevant than it was weeks ago for the Giants because we sit ugly at 1-4. So I'm sure many of you Giants fans are looking ahead to the NFL draft saying, who are we going to get? Are there any quarterbacks just in case Daniel Jones doesn't pan out and they want a clean house? Not really. Are there any offensive linemen? Yes, there's some pretty good ones. But let's take a look at the Chicago Bears right now, see where we project this first-round pick to be. At this point, many fans are going to project this to be towards the back end of the first round, but we have a Bears reporter, Bears content creator right on the line to discuss this, give his takes, give his opinions, and his season outlook. So, Max, how you doing, and how are the Bears doing?
I'm doing fantastic. The Bears are doing better than what I expected, but this always kind of happens every year. I never really expect much out of the squad, and they somehow put something together. Us Bears fans are famous at overreacting over everything. So whenever we don't see perfection, we want to sell the house. But we're winning games. We're winning them ugly. But at the end of the day, who cares? I'm seeing shades of 2018 in this team. This same exact time in 2018, that was Matt Nagy's first year in which he won Coach of the Year. Ryan Pace, our general manager, won Executive of the Year. The Bears went 12-4 that year. Exact same week, we're heading into week 6. The Bears were 3-2. So there's a lot of parallels going on right now between these two teams. Staunch defense. The running game is winning the games. The passing game is just kind of there to pick up some necessary yards and some clutch moments, like 3rd and 11, Justin Fields trying to seal the game. So there's a lot of similarities between this team. But for you, Giants fans, if the draft were today, the Bears would be drafting at 22. Now, that's not going to make a lot of you happy, but I do want to put this disclaimer out there. This draft class isn't really stacked, so maybe it's not necessarily a terrible thing, but there's definitely some players in the first round that will go in the first round that could benefit the needs of the New York Giants. But unfortunately for you guys, fortunately for us, the Bears have kind of surprised us after a less than stellar yet dominating performance nonetheless against the Las Vegas Raiders, handing former head coach John Gruden his final loss in the NFL by the hands of Khalil Mack, the man he traded as his first action of head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yep, beautiful ending to that storyline. But anyway, when we're talking about the NFL draft, of course, Giants fans, you hear the number 22nd overall pick. No, that's not what we hoped for or expected. Many of us, towards the beginning of the season, when the Bears started off a little slow, we were saying, ooh, Giants might get 2 top 10 picks this year. That's simply just not going to happen. I don't think so. It would take a total implosion from the Bears throughout the rest of the season in order for that to happen. So the way that I see it, that 22nd overall pick, keep in mind, we're coming off of a Week 5 performance where our 20th overall pick just had 10 catches for 189 yards plus a rush for 7, 196 total yards from scrimmage against the Dallas Cowboys. That's Kadarius Toney, the 20th overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft. So don't be upset by the 22nd overall pick from the Bears. The Giants did have some foresight. They did make a really good deal there when they made that trade because, honestly, maybe they knew we weren't going to be so good this year. Maybe they knew they needed to plan ahead to next season. And that's ultimately why we have this first round pick. And that's why we have this extra 20th overall pick, 22nd overall pick. And really, 22nd, 20th, those players in that range can be very good players. It's just about making the right draft selections. And it's always going to be the question for the Giants now, who will be making those draft selections, right? Not sure. Dave Gettleman seems like he's on the very, very hot seat. So we'll have to look ahead and see that. But for the Chicago Bears, when we're talking about them right now, if the season ended today, they're in the playoffs. They're the 6th seed. They're going up against Tampa Bay, a team that they're facing pretty soon on the schedule as well. So, Max, the season trajectory looks really good for Chicago. It looks like they're trending towards being a playoff team and maybe a legitimate one at that. So how do you feel about that? Ultimately, where do you project that they land in playoff seeding?
Yeah, so a lot of great things what you just said. Kadarius Toney is an absolute gamer. It was really nice seeing him come out for once. What a crazy concept! Get it to your explosive rookie and let him just kind of dice up defenses. Is what he absolutely did against the Cowboys. And Mr. Defensive Player of the Year front runner. I don't even want to get into that conversation because I think it's a completely overblown story. Like, let's look at interceptions versus how many yards he's allowed in the season.
Thank you. Thank you.
But that's besides the point. No, you're completely right. They're as Bears fans know, we really don't get first round picks much in the Ryan Pace era. In fact, it was just about 2 years ago we didn't have a pick until the fourth round, and that fourth round pick came out to be David Montgomery, who just before his injury was on track for another 1,000-yard plus rushing. He's led the league for about 2 years in a row up before his injury in yards after contact. Absolute stud. And in the sixth round of this draft, we were able to secure Khalil Herbert. He's a ridiculous, elusive, but also big body back out of Virginia Tech. He went for 50 yards after contact against the Raiders and helped the Chicago Bears put up over 130 yards rushing against the Las Vegas Raiders in that game. So what the Bears' identity is built on right now is basically around like late round studs, diamonds in the roughs who are really performing more than people expected them to be. They kind of have that underdog mentality is why I say it's akin to 2018. Remember, they were 3-3 in 2017 and came out 12-4 in 2018. So if there's one thing that I've learned as a Bears fan is to never write them off because they love that. They enjoy it. It's kind of that Philadelphia mentality. Maybe Nick Foles is helping out. He's still in our locker room, by the way. Many people don't know that. He's our QB3. So we might have like the most stacked depth at the quarterback position, which just should help us down the line. But we're talking about season projection here. And one thing that we as Bears analysts were looking at the beginning of the season was the fact that we had the 31st hardest schedule in the NFL. So when we looked at our first 5-game outlook, a lot of fans weren't expecting us to take a win against the Bengals, the upstart Joe Burrow Bengals, with that loaded offense. We weren't anticipating us to take a win away from the Raiders. Of course, we were expecting a win against the Lions because we never lose to the Lions. We lose to Matthew Stafford, but we don't lose to the Lions. Is what I like to say. So we kick the Lions in the mouth. We kick the Raiders in the mouth, and that's all because of Justin Fields. So there's a lot to like us as Bears fans. We're really excited. We have Green Bay this week, which is a huge matchup. It's Packers week. I think we could split the series this year. I think that we can legitimately give the Packers a run for their money. The real thing to watch, though, if we're considering the Bears a playoff team, are the trajectory of several teams. One of them is the Minnesota Vikings because they're at our heels. They're starting to get their act together. I don't know if they're deep enough to carry them into the end of the season, but we just have to see. They're always kind of a name that's just in contention for a wild card spot, and they just happen to be in the same division as us. I'm looking at teams like the New Orleans Saints. Sean Payton can never be called out of any conversation when it comes to playoffs, and he's finding his team a way to win. I'm looking at the Seattle Seahawks. Russell Wilson, he got banged up. He's out for a couple of weeks now, maybe even a month or two. That's definitely going to hurt their playoff chances, but can we write them off? Regardless, there are going to be 2 playoff teams out of the NFC West, the Los Angeles Rams and the Arizona Cardinals at this point. Even if the Cardinals completely blow up, if they only win 3-4 more games, they're a lock in the playoffs. So that's something that has to be taken into consideration. And then we really look at the East. It's not really that strong again this year, so there may only be one. Maybe Washington football team puts it back together. Maybe the Eagles find their step. Who knows? It's really early to say. But the Bears have discovered a winning formula, which is let's let our defense get our offense and opportunities to make points, and let's use our running game and our young dynamic quarterback to not make mistakes to put points on the board.
Yep, and right there, we're going to talk about that young dynamic quarterback next. That's a perfect way to segue into it. Of course, he hasn't been superstar. He's not running for Offensive Rookie of the Year, not running away with any accolades based on his play so far. He looks pretty much like any young rookie quarterback would look, right? Young rookie quarterbacks don't always have those instant Justin Herbert seasons, right? They don't always step into the league and they're bona fide stars already. You're calling them top 10 quarterbacks by the end of the year. And so we're not seeing that right now with Justin Herbert, but we are seeing some flashes of great potential. We're seeing some good ball placement, and we're seeing a knack for winning, which is something that he always had at Ohio State, which is something I know a lot of people say wins are not a quarterback stat, but to some extent, they definitely can be. If you will a team to victory in the end, you do deserve some credit for that as a quarterback. So for Justin Fields, I want to know, Max, what are you thinking about him so far? How do you like him? Are you really happy with him? Where can he improve? And basically, what's the long-term outlook of Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears?
Yeah, absolutely. Every Bears fan in the world is absolutely like ecstatic to have Justin on our sideline. There's not a single Bears fan that is saying, or if they are, it's for the joke to say put Andy back in or put Nick back in. What you see is what you get with Justin, and he is still raw. There is no question about it. Most of the quarterbacks in this draft class are incredibly raw, but some of them are surrounded by good schemes. Some of them aren't. So when we see Mac Jones, who's putting up some pretty impressive numbers, just think about the offensive mind and some of the players that are surrounding him. Now, his offensive line is basically gone, which is tough for Mac because he's not really an outside the pocket passer. But he's in a good system, which is going to develop him incredibly well because that's kind of what Mac needed in the first place. So that's something that, when we're comparing quarterbacks from this draft class, because they'll be compared for the rest of their career, it's who is where at what time. And I think that's really important when we're talking about Justin Fields. So Justin Fields comes out, his first start is against the Browns, puts up, 1 passing yard in the entire game. It's the worst offensive performance in like modern football history by statistics. One of the most embarrassing days in Chicago Bears history. But what happens the next week? They bounce back and they win. Okay, cool. What happens the week after that? Well, they win. That's what's really impressive about this team and what's impressive about Justin is he's improving every week. So his first number one issue was, yes, he got sacked left and right, but he wasn't letting the ball go. He just wouldn't. There were tons of routes where the receivers were wide open, or there was just a degree of separation that Justin could fit the ball in because he has that ability to, but he didn't trust his receivers enough. And that comes off the back of Matt Nagy, our offensive guru, head coach, not putting Justin in practice with the ones during the offseason. So when Justin started against the Browns, he literally had 5 days of practice with consistent practice with the ones. So of course there's not going to be a level of trust there. So he's going to hold on to the ball a little bit more. Well, what did we see the next week? Well, he started trusting his zip a little bit more. He started trusting his receivers. And what we saw against Las Vegas particularly was the biggest step in the right direction. The first 2 drives of the game were absolute duds. Justin was running around. He was getting hit. And then something clicked. And he said, wait a second. I need to trust myself more. And I need to trust my guys more. An interesting statistic about Justin Fields this far into the season is that he has a top 5 accuracy and deep ball rating. Before the Raiders game, I haven't seen the metrics since, but before the Raiders game, he was in front of Kyler Murray in his deep ball accuracy, right? So he's putting absolute dimes in bread baskets when he's going deep down the field. Another interesting statistic is Justin Fields leads the NFL in aggressiveness rating, which means that he, more than any other quarterback in the league, is putting the ball in the hands of wide receivers that have less than a yard of separation between them and defenders. So he's starting to trust himself more, trust that he can take games over. And if you go back and if you watch the highlights from this Raiders game, which I don't blame you if you don't, you're a Giants fan, why would you watch Bears highlights? But if you do, I want you to look at an impressive 3rd and 11 where the Raiders are literally playing like 5-man back right at the line. They're daring Chicago to throw. Justin Fields says, okay, bet. Literally whips it. The second Darnell Mooney turns around, ball's right there, first down. That's how he wins the game. Or his first NFL touchdown pass, which by the way happened last week. So that's, a little sad for me. That comes down to play calling too. I could talk about that for hours. But he put the ball exactly in the hands of a fairly contested receiver. And if you look at the all-22, the cornerback that was covering the receiver literally looked at Justin, looked at the receiver, put his hands out like, what? Like I'm not making this stuff up. And then that's where the gif you've been seeing around on Twitter, Justin's on his knees, like finger gunning, and then says, like, come on, give me some more. So the kid is starting to get his swagger, which is what we saw him do in Ohio State. And once Justin gets going, once he gets rolling, he's nearly impossible. So it's a slow start. But here's the thing that's impressive about Justin compared to other rookies. He's not putting his team in situations to lose. He's not making mistakes that will lose games. Right now, he's a quarterback that you can win with, not you can win because, right? Patrick Mahomes wins games. The Chiefs win games because of Patrick Mahomes, right? Let's say that what's a team? The New York Giants may win games with Daniel Jones, but they don't win every game because of Daniel Jones. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, there's a distinct difference between the elite top level quarterbacks and some of the more moderate serviceable quarterbacks. Justin right now as a rookie is right here. And that's something that we as fans are going, holy cow, this is really exciting, because he's young, he's 22, he has a lot to learn, he has a lot to grow. And the offense obviously is getting used to it. We saw a completely new playbook against the Raiders, a completely new playbook. So when Matt Nagy gave over play calling abilities to Bill Lazor, John DeFilippo, and the rest of the offensive minds in the Bears, it seems like they're just running with that and going, whatever you knew from Matt, throw that out the window, because we're going to give you a whole new play set.
Yeah, and my favorite part about what you just said is Justin's finally getting that swagger back that he had at Ohio State. I think that's really important when a quarterback plays with a high amount of confidence. That can do a lot for the team. That can do a lot for, the leadership, right? That's a lot of leadership that comes along with that. Being confident enough to be a leader, being confident enough to be a playmaker and go out there and make plays. And then the other thing that I really like that you said is that he's a quarterback that you can win with. You're not winning in spite of him, right? They're winning with him, which is an important distinction, because when you're winning in spite of a quarterback, that was when the Bears were winning with Mitch Trubisky, right? They were winning in spite of Mitch Trubisky. Mitch Trubisky was not winning them games, and he was not letting them win games. They were winning. It was almost like the defense was winning games, and they were also playing against their offense and playing against the Bears offense, playing against Mitch Trubisky, right? So this is obviously a breath of fresh air for Chicago Bears fans. They see this potential. They see long-term potential, superstar, rock star potential with Justin Fields. And that's exciting. And I have no hatred towards the Bears at all. I actually like the Bears. I root for the Bears, even though I am a Giants fan. I like the Bears, man. And unfortunately, this year, I can't do that. I have to root against the Bears, right? For this season, of course. So that's unfortunate. But with that 22nd overall pick, you never know. The Giants could get a really good player. It looks like we have a superstar in Kadarius Toney. 22nd, maybe it ends up being 25th. Maybe it ends up being 18th, 17th. But at this point, the Bears do look like their defense is good enough, and their playmakers around Justin Fields are good enough to help him get into the playoffs at this point. So a long-term outlook on Justin Fields, I do think he is a franchise quarterback. I assume you agree?
Yeah, so there's like two things that I would caution on that. Like, I don't want to be overzealous. I agree, he's definitely going to have success in his career. I think we're a little early out on saying he's going to be a franchise quarterback. Just me being conservative, because I heard the same thing over and over and over again. We had a couple good years out of Jay Cutler. We almost went to the Super Bowl with Jay Cutler. We had a great year with Mitch Trubisky. We should have gone to the NFC Championship game with Mitch Trubisky, but we got doinked out, right? So I've heard this many times, and I've been hurt many times. So I'm really going to take a more conservative approach and say, let me see him zip the ball some more. But he has shown flashes of brilliance thus far. And I think an issue that I've seen arise is Matt Nagy tried to make Mitchell Trubisky into something he wasn't. And Matt Nagy pretended that Mitchell Trubisky was Alex Smith, because Nagy's offense was built around Alex Smith and the Andy Reid Chiefs back when he was there in 2016-17. So when he took a dual threat quarterback who was much more comfortable running out of the pocket, running bootlegs, Mitchell Trubisky would have put up more points. He probably would have done a better job than Jared Goff and Sean McVay's offense. Completely hot take, because that's who Mitch is. He loves the bootleg. He loves running off the gun. He's a one read guy. He's got a cannon of an arm. He's just going to rip it, have fun with the game. Instead, Matt Nagy said, you have to be a field manager. You have to be a general. I want you to read the defense. I want you to call the audibles. I want you to make all of the decisions on the field. And Mitch said, okay, I'll do my best. It obviously didn't work. And what I think I'm seeing already is Matt doing the same thing to Justin, because last week, there weren't a lot of design plays for Justin to be on the run. There weren't a lot of design bootlegs. There were a couple quarterback draws, which were nice. But he asked Justin to manage the game. We were up by, I think it was 2 scores. There were about 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and he sent out the offense, and they ran the ball. And Justin audibled into a run, and then they ran the ball again, and then they got first down, and they ran the ball again. Like, that wouldn't have happened, I think, if it was Mitch. Mitch wouldn't have made that audible. He would have made something like a dumb decision. But Justin said, okay, I'll do it. That's what upsets me, is I think that if Matt Nagy's gone, if there's a new offensive scheme behind Justin, if they allow him to play to his strengths, that will be a game changer, and that'll allow him to kind of run with how he wants to run. Like Eric Bieniemy did that for Patrick Mahomes. He wasn't forcing Pat to do something he didn't want to do. And Andy Reid just kind of stood there in the background and said, yeah, all right, it was good for me. So that's my only air of caution there.
Yeah, and one thing that I'll say with keeping the football clean from Justin Fields, he has 3 turnover-worthy plays. For those of you who do subscribe to the beliefs of Pro Football Focus, or at least take some sort of semblance from their statistics, 3 turnover-worthy plays through these 5 games or through these 5 weeks for Justin Fields. Granted, he's really only been playing in 3 of them, but that's only 1 turnover-worthy play per game. He had 0 in Week 5. He had 1 in Week 4, and he had 2 in Week 2 versus Cincinnati. I believe that's the one where everything was disastrous. Or was that against Cleveland? Cleveland was a disastrous one, right?
Yeah. Cleveland was the bad game. Bengals was Week 2 where Andy went down and Justin came in.
Okay.
That was a designed rob. It was a design thief play where they dropped the backer that pretend he was going to blitz at the last second. He dropped back. Justin completely misread that. But the great thing about Justin is if you watch his press conferences, he literally recites word for word exactly what went wrong and gives you like the formation and says, yeah, he's like, the mic was right here at the 5 hash. My Z was running a 5 and out. And it's crazy how he does that, because there's not a lot of quarterbacks in the league that give you a play-by-play like color commentary of what happened. They go, well, yeah, I'll have to look at the tape and make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, cough, cough, Daniel Jones, right? But anyway, with the turnover-worthy plays, I do want to put it at least into perspective. So over the last 3 weeks, he has 1 turnover-worthy play. Let's take a look at Trevor Lawrence. He has 5 turnover-worthy plays. So no matter what you think about Justin Fields, what you think about Trevor Lawrence, long-term, I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be all right. I think coaching is his issue, but we're always going to compare those quarterbacks. As Max mentioned, they were all drafted in the same class, and a lot of people didn't think so, but there were some people that thought Justin Fields was QB1 in this draft class, So that's a fair comparison to make. You look at the past 3 games, Justin Fields playing pretty good. No, he's not lighting up the scoreboard. No, he's not throwing for 500 yards per game. It's not like Patrick Mahomes in his sophomore season or Justin Herbert in his rookie season, but it is a pretty good start to his career, and Bears fans have to be pretty optimistic going into this season, going into next season, everything going forward. But this season, we'll wrap it up here, Max. Looks like a playoff team. I think it's a playoff team. If you had to give a final record prediction and playoff seeding prediction and draft position prediction, sorry, because that is the main subject of this video for the Giants. Go ahead, give those to me. We would love to hear them.
Yeah, so looking at the schedule, looking at the date of the schedule, there's still a lot of good teams. We play Green Bay this week, the Buccaneers next week. We have the Ravens at home. We have the Seahawks in Seattle. We have Arizona at home, which, gotta love. And that's in December, by the way. So if you want to see Kyler Murray freezes his butt off, tune into that game. But, I think there's an opportunity for the Bears. There is a path to the playoffs here. I think a fair estimate would be to say that they could win 8 to 10 games this year. So that would probably comfortably put them in 25, 26, or maybe, down to 24, kind of in the mid-20s range, kind of where they're at right now, just a couple picks higher because there are a lot of 3-2 teams at the moment. But we're thinking kind of a early exit out of the playoffs. I don't think they have the depth to get towards, NFC chip level or Super Bowl level, but I think they definitely have talent in the NFC to make some noise and sneak into the playoffs again, similar to what they did last year. Although I think this squad is significantly more talented than whatever they put on the field last year.
All right. Yep. That sounds good. If I had to guess, I'm thinking that they're going to be, one of those 6 seeds, one of those wild card teams, and probably an early exit as well. That's going to be my prediction, but hope everybody enjoyed. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much, Max, for joining me and discussing the Chicago Bears here after week 5. I'm going to have you back on in a few weeks because, you never know in the NFL. Things change mighty fast. So probably around week 10, we'll get back in here. We'll discuss once again what the rest of the season looks like for the Chicago Bears. But please leave a like if you did enjoy this video. Subscribe if you're new. Go check out Maxx on Twitter at Maxx Smith ESM. Go check out Fireside Bears on YouTube, on Twitter, and on all of those podcast streaming services where you can also find Fireside Giants. Ring the bell so you don't miss a video, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
Bear down.